Well, good morning, people. Um, we had a table shoot over at the club last week, and I scored. I do most of the scoring over there. And I stated previously in some postings that I'm not the biggest fan of table shooting simply because I'd rather be chunk gun shooting. But then I kind of felt like I was doing a disservice to anybody that was interested on here in table shooting. So I'm going to go over something that some of you fellas, maybe you don't have the money to put peep sights on a gun. Maybe you just you don't want to put pinhead sights on an existing gun. Maybe you have a nice old squirrel gun you'd like to shoot in some of the, we'll call them the factory or the 10-pound table class. And so I'll show you what I've done to my old squirrel rifle here, and maybe it'll help you guys to set a gun up for table shooting with your existing gun. This is just a 32 caliber I built several years ago, probably 35. Open sights, big, thick front blade. I set it up so when I am hunting, I can set the squirrel's head on that on top of that front sight, and be basically a 6 o'clock hold on the squirrel's head. So I don't want to change those sights. Obviously, hopefully I'll still get the squirrel hunt a little bit before I pass, but this would be a way you can use an existing gun and its sights without doing any alteration. We'll get it going here, and then I'll put up a facsimile of the sights and everything, and then kind of give you an idea of what you can do to yours. All right. Okay, I've made this representation of a front and rear sight on your rifle. It's just a basic rectangular square notch in the back, blade in the front. Like I said, on my squirrel rifle, I've made that blade real thick because it matches up better to a squirrel's head in the woods. But a lot of you probably have a gun very similar to this, the way it's set up with the sights and everything. So now we'll go over some ways to use those sights. Okay, I've seen this quite a bit at some of the, even chunk gun shoots and everything. They just make a rectangle as a spotter, and you set that up on the top of your front sight, and kind of gets everything lined up for you. The downside of this is, if I can peel it off here, sometimes you don't know where you're at in depth on this thing, because from that distance everything turns black. Then what you get into, you might not be in deep enough. So then you end up with a gap. Well, that's going to mess everything up where your shot lands. So I've even seen guys put a colored strip underneath this as a go, no-go gauge. I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see that at 30, especially at 60 yards. If you can see that much of it, you're way up out of it anyway. So here's another way that might work for you. Now, for me anyway, this is the best method. You cut a circle. You'll have to gauge that circle however it works best for you at whatever distance you're on. But the thing with it, as you see now, I'm out of that. I'm just a little high on that. But if I move that, keep moving, adjusting my seat and my gun around, I can set that sight right on that front blade. What that does, that gives you these white spots right here to help gauge how deep you are. So the only thing you're worried about depth is that very center right there. And that's a lot easier to gauge where you're at on your target and everything. I prefer, there's formulas around that how to make a circle the same size as this at 30 or 60 yards. I've done a video on that. I prefer this circle to be a little bigger than the blade as it appears when I'm sighting in, because I think it's easier to find the center of that circle when it's bigger than the blade itself. And that will give you a pretty accurate sight picture there to use. Now, I'll go back and I'll show you a target that I shot yesterday. I was over at the club yesterday. We had a regular monthly shoot, and I was running the shoot. Bill had to work, so my back was hurting something terrible, and I knew I couldn't do a woods walk, so I decided to work on this, setting this squirrel rifle up for table shooting. So I had to do some shooting with it, and here's what I started out at our range at the club is only 25 yards. It's not 30. So I use this circle here. This is a 4-inch circle. Now that looks humongous compared to what you've been seeing in some of the other videos. But you got to remember now, we're not talking about a pinhead sight anymore. We're talking about a front blade and a rear notch. This, when I set it up at that yardage, it looks really good. And what I done, if you imagine this was your front sight, you can see how I lined that up and set it up right there. Now, when I got there, I opened my box, shooting box, getting everything ready, and I realized I did not have my adjustable powder measure in my box. All I had in the box was a bunch of, I threw them all in there because it was my box I used for my small calibers. Bunch of deer antler powder measures I've made over the years and just throwed them in the box, and none of them were marked. So, and I couldn't remember, I mean, I haven't shot this gun in years and years. So I couldn't remember what the load was for it. So I'm thinking I'm going to have to go through here and just try different powder measures. Well, the first powder measure I pulled out was a little tiny fella. I should have known just looking at it. But anyway, I loaded up 2 shots with it. Those are the shots you see right there. Well, it turns out when I get home and I actually measure it, it was an 18 grain powder measure. I think it was actually the one I made for my grandson's very first rifle. So you can see that's not stabilizing at all at that. Those are 25 yards, man. Those ought to be better than that. Finally, I went to what appeared to be the deepest one, the biggest one in the box. And it turned out, as I measured it later when I got home, it's 30 grains. And at 30 grains seems to be perfect. I've always been a 1 grain per caliber guy anyway as a starting point. So I don't know how you would measure 32 grains, but so it's 30 grains. I've since marked all of them, by the way. Once I went to the 30 grains, I'm shooting a 315 ball in that 32. I'm shooting a 15 thousandths patch, and it was lubed with ballistol and water mixture. Loads pretty good. Right there, those are 8 shots in that hole right there. And I can tell you, for table gun shooting, I can live with that. I think that's a completely good load right there. You can see that it's about 3/4 inch wide, maybe 5/8 deep. That's a good 8-shot group right there. Now, back on we'll go back to the spotter for a minute. You're involving yourself with a blade front, notch rear. The pinhead system is out. We're not using it on this gun. So background and spotter are completely different. You hear we see green backgrounds, blue, gray, whatever at chunk gun shoots. It's whatever your eye registers best for you. What I have found at chunk gun shooting, even at 60 yards, this manila folder material and the black gives me a very good, crisp picture. Of course, a chunk, this would be a black donut with a white circle. And actually, that's great for chunk gun at 60 yards. But at 25 or 30, whatever your club has, you don't need all that. What you're going to need, if you're doing this system here, is you're going to need a black circle and a background. For me, that's the manila folder and the black. You size that to, you size that to the front side of your gun. Again, it's your eyes. You got to figure that out on your own. Best way to do is just cut several circles or take a compass and a pair of scissors to the range with you. Trim them down until you like it. And remember, when you're doing this, what you want to see is that right there. And then that gives you these little white areas or manila areas in here to judge where you're at on the target. The gun, most everything you do for chunk gun shooting will apply to a table gun. I'm a firm believer in cutting your patches at the muzzle. No pre-cuts. We've already did a video on that. What can happen doing that? A tight load, for 315 and 15,000 ticking on this gun. It's a Green Mountain barrel. That's a pretty snug load. The powder, again, this one worked best with 30 grains. The thing about setting one of these guns up for what I'll call the 10-pound class, you want that gun to be as close to 10 pounds as you can get, because you want weight in that gun to tamp down the recoil. I'm also a believer in if you're shooting table matches, try to stay away from big calibers. I would not, I mean, there's guys doing it, but honestly, if I was going through my gun collection to pick a gun out to use for a 10-pound table match, I would pick out one of my 32s or the 36 or the 40. I wouldn't go any higher than that. You put 10 pounds in a 32 caliber gun and it really has very little recoil. And recoil is important on a match like this, because if that same 10-pound gun was a 54 caliber, you're going to have a lot more recoil. And that recoil, I don't care how good you hold up and hold the gun and how good you set up, you still got a lot more recoil. And recoil moves the gun around. The gun moving around is not inducive to good shooting. So if you're going to pick one of your guns out of your case or out of your vault, pick the smaller caliber and throw as much weight in it as you can to make and still keep it legal. That squirrel rifle I showed you at the beginning, I guarantee you one thing's going to happen to it. That wood ramrod's going to come out, and there's going to be a 5/16 steel rod go in those thimbles. That will push me right close to the 10-pound line and give me a lot more weight there to battle recoil with. Okay, like I said, I never meant to downgrade table shooting. I get it. I'll probably come to a day where I can't get up and down either, or don't want to anyway, and I'll probably shoot that table match. I just want you to know, if you don't have the money for peep sights and all that good stuff, you can still do it with a gun that's in your closet or in your vault. Matter of fact, I can tell you right now, at our club, the guy that does the best shooting there month after month is a guy with open sights, and it's a 40 caliber gun. And this is the same system he uses. So it's completely doable. I do not believe for one moment you could shoot any better than that right there with peep sights. I just don't believe it. So, and I've shot a lot of peep sights over the years. So it can be done with an open sight gun. You just got to pick out the right sight system and everything. Okay, guys, I appreciate you stopping by. I got to get out and have a cup of coffee. It's Sunday. We'll be going to church here in a little bit. So thanks for coming by.